Welcome back to another episode of Wine and Wine Real Estate Uncorked. So today we are talking about a topic that hits home for many, and that's selling real estate during life's most stressful moments. So we're going to dive into some topics and see how we can help you. And I would be absolutely remiss to not mention how much we want to extend our love, appreciation, and prayers for all those in California that are experiencing these troubling times with the California fires right now.
Absolutely.
And we want to extend how thankful we are to all the firefighters, all of the countries that are helping us and uniting through these troubling times, and definitely sending out prayers. May God bless everyone through this awful tragedy.
Devastating, yes.
It's absolutely devastating. We wanted to touch base on some distressed situations on this podcast, as I feel it's really important to make sure people are aware that there is help. It is not always ideal situations where your house looks beautiful, you're in prime situations and financial strength and everything is in your corner for providing the best time in selling. We have multiple stories. Every year we come across probably more.
Well,
Sometimes we have a lot of distress situations. And, those are really heartfelt moments that we wanted to dive into and show that the care and the ability to sell and help you are there through those times.
And I think the most important thing, the message we're trying to get across is a lot of sellers or homeowners, I should say, that are in situations like we're going to discuss feel like the entire weight of that situation is on themselves. And it's stressful, like we talk about and we're about to talk about. But I think we want to get across that one of the most, I think, our incredible ability is to help people in that situation and to take that burden off of them and to show them that there is a less stressful way to get through it with our help. And I'm touting ourselves, but we do a lot of this work for people in our history and our careers. And I think that it's really important to get the point across is that you're not alone and that we're a team that is here to help you through these types of situations. So when you hear all these, think how the Virgilio team helps, because that's what we do.
Yeah, and life happens.
It does.
Sometimes selling your home, and that's the next step towards a brighter future. So there's no judgment. It's all 100% to get you into that next best space, which is providing a bright new chapter for yourself.
Yeah, a new beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go over some stressful situations that we have experienced personally with sellers in helping them get through these situations. So we're going to cover a multitude of topics that goes through some of the things that you may need help for, or someone might need help for, parents or anyone really. So the first one we're going to talk about and dive into is hoarding situations.
Yes. One of the most interesting thing is when we walk into a home that is packed full of stuff. We find this in many situations. We find this in people who have inherited property from their parents, grandparents, or other relatives, and they're overwhelmed by what to do with everything.
Right.
And so when you start looking at a project like that, the first thing you have to figure out is, all this stuff, what do you want to keep? And that's what we kind of help guide.
And I think we understand that this is an extremely delicate situation. And many of the owners are very tied to all of the items within their house, whether or not we think that it's something that should be thrown away or not.
Well, that's something with hoarders. Hoarders, the whole thing is that everything has a meaning to them. A plastic bag means something to them. It's certainly a situation that requires probably some great counseling, but more importantly, you're right. Every piece of paper, everything in that house means something to them. They can't get rid of it. That's the whole hoarding thing.
So the idea is making sure that we partner with trusted professional organizers and cleaners who really specialize and understand the process in these types of situations and really have the level of care needed to get our clients through to the next step.
Yeah. If it's a situation where the hoarder is still in the house, that's the most delicate of situations. And there's the situations where it was hoarded and the person's no longer in the house,
Right.
which certainly is a lot less stressful for everybody else. But when a hoarder's living in the house, it's really, really hard to get that person to let go. So it's a very, very delicate situation.
Right. So number one, we want to make sure that they feel supported.
Absolutely.
But once we get through that piece and the home is cleared, we evaluate what improvements or staging can be done to maximize getting it to where we need it to get top dollar within the market.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing that you see the differences in what we've done when we started with a house full of stuff to where it gets to the end after we've done the improvements and everything else to make that house shine.
Right.
And even the people who we've helped that were hoarders or are hoarders or have a portion of hoarding, when it's all said and done, they're amazed. It's
Right.
like, oh my God, my house, yeah, it's...
Well, I think one of the things we talked about a lot all the time is that the full service solutions that
Absolutely.
we provide, and that's whether or not it's a distressed situation or any particular home we sell.
Absolutely.
So the goal is on a distress though to take what feels impossible and to make it a manageable process.
Most definitely.
Yeah. So that's the hoarding. So, again, we find those situations frequently.
Yeah,
I
it
think
happens.
hoarding happens more often than people think.
Different levels of hoarding too. So,
Correct.
yeah.
So if there are questions in regards to that, or you have a loved one that you feel needs some help, we're here for that.
Yeah.
So the second topic that we wanted to discuss was default foreclosure and disclosure.
Yeah. Tough time.
Yeah. So, things are happening and that will always be part of, now that's not a huge part of our marketplace, but for those that are experiencing those needs right now, it's heartbreaking.
Well, we live in a very expensive area and it costs a lot of money to live here. And so something happens, job loss, who knows what, injury, you could fall into default easily
Right.
in the Bay Area.
Yep.
It's just so expensive to live here. So
Right.
just a few months down the road, you could be looking at, oh my gosh, I can't make my mortgage payment or something. Who knows?
Yeah. And, people are trying to figure out what makes most sense and what to pay for.
Oh.
They have mounting debt, they missed a mortgage payment,
Yeah.
and that feels crushing to a lot of people. And sometimes it's without information, we just shut down immediately, right?
Right. We shut the door
Yeah.
and keep everybody at bay. But what we learned through the mortgage crisis from
Right.
2009, 10, 11 is that now lenders are very, very, very open to understanding the needs of their clients, of the people who have a loan with them. And they're very open to situations that need their help and cooperation to make sure that your home does not get foreclosed.
Right.
Starting with communication. And there's a couple ways to go. We counsel people on how to communicate, or you could give us permission to communicate for you. There's an authorization form that we use for that. But it's important that we do not shut down, that we open the doors to communication if you're in a situation where you're going to be late on your mortgage and or behind.
Right. And oftentimes there's equity in the home that, until you know what the numbers look like, you don't want to walk away from a situation at all.
Right.
And we've seen it where people were just going to let the house go, thinking that there wasn't going to be any kind of option for them to receive money from the sale of the property,
Right.
and they did in fact get money.
Right. And there's solutions is all we're trying to say in this situation where there's a financial hardship and making the mortgage payment becomes a little more difficult. There's solutions. There's solutions, especially if there's equity in the property, starting with something called a forbearance,
Right.
where the lender will allow that money to be put on the back end of the note. They also work out payments to say, let's go, you're 2 months behind. We'll spread that out over the next 6 months. And then the idea that you could sell your home and take the equity with you. The key is that communication. Once again, communications, not to shut down, not to be worried about what people are going to think, because we're professionals and our idea is to help you. That's what we do. We help.
Right.
And we want to make sure that you're in a position that you walk away stronger than weaker. And it's not common right now, but it was for many years.
It happens.
But what was many for years was short sales.
Yeah.
Where there was no equity, people are behind in their mortgage, and we negotiate settlements with the lender to make sure that we could, one, sell the property, get you out of the situation you're in, and move on to a new fresh start. So.
Yeah. So I think the biggest key is that we're here to help, and we want to make sure that people move forward with dignity and confidence in knowing what their options are when they're in tight spots like this. And the earlier in the situation, the better, because it helps you plan your next steps and to not feel sad through the process.
You're not alone.
Yeah.
You're not alone. Yep. And no matter how bad it feels or seems, the lender has heard it a bunch of times. So it's not unique. Although your situation may be unique, they've heard the situations that people fall into. And it's to nobody's fault. Just life happens. And unfortunately, and when you have those situations, you're not alone. There's help for you.
So the next topic, which, unfortunately is common, divorces and family changes. This is one that, divorce and or family changes brings an added layer of complexity to selling a home. It's not just about the property, it's about navigating emotion, timelines, and different priorities for multiple people involved.
Yeah.
So it really takes another level of care and understanding to help bring everyone to a point of acceptance and getting what needs to happen done.
Absolutely. And the emotional part is probably the hardest piece of that one.
Right.
You have a shared asset if you're separating as a couple, or something's happening that you need to sell your home because of whatever that's going on in your family, there's an emotional aspect that it's not easy to separate the emotions from the asset. And it's something that you have to come to grips with, that it's an asset that you both own, or it could be a family member too, not necessarily a divorce, that you both own, and you need to figure out how to easily walk away with the equity that you both deserve.
Right.
So it's just a touchy situation.
Right, and timelines and things and everything. Sensitivity and
where do you go? There's a whole lot of stuff that comes with it. But again, the whole theme, I think, and what we're talking about is that you're not alone in this.
Right.
And that you have a professional team here that's been through it with multiple people, multiple times, and can, with an open mind, you can walk through this situation and be better for it when it's all said and done.
Right.
Yeah. It's the open mind part that's hard because, it's tough.
It's an emotional process.
Extremely emotional. Extremely emotional.
So the next one we have to talk about is inherited properties and probate. So inheriting property obviously can feel like a blessing, but it also sometimes feels like a burden as well, especially if you're dealing with legal complexities, a huge amount of grief.
Yep.
Oftentimes a property hasn't been maintained for some time. So there's a lot that you need to, or you feel like you need to do in order to get a house ready for selling.
Yep.
Again, we're going to roll right back to this full service approach.
Absolutely.
Because why don't you talk a little bit about what we do? Because I think oftentimes people take that huge burden onto themselves.
Correct.
And we're like, hold on, pump the brakes. We do a lot.
And that's why in any of our selling situations, we ask our clients or prospective clients to hold on before you start doing anything.
Right.
Let's meet and go over what one needs to be done, or maybe some things don't need to be done. But let's look at the picture together before we start doing things. That's the biggest piece. But before we even get into that section, let me just stress the urgency of anyone that owns a property to have a living trust.
Oh, 100%.
You need to avoid the situation that comes with probate. Probate's a long process. The house cannot be sold immediately.
A costly process.
Yeah, well, and it's a set cost. The probate attorneys make an X percentage. It's like a real estate transaction. They get a percentage of the value of the estate. But more importantly, it's time, because probate could take a year before you're able to actually do something with that asset. So I encourage everybody that does not have a living trust to look into a living trust. And we have some recommendations for that if you want to talk to us about who is a good person to talk to. We've got lots of people that we use, that we refer. So starting with that. That being said, living trust in place or not, the amount of work that has to be done needs to be determined next. So let's look at a property that's inherited to you. Oh, Actually, I'm going to stop that thought. I'm going to go back one segment. The new rules with Proposition 19 also affect what happens when you inherit a property. Used to be a parent-child transfer. Say your parents pass and they put the house in your name. Well, now you have to determine if you're going to live in that house or not. Because if you go live in a house, then the property tax can transfer. If you're not going into it, you're going to have to pay in excess of $1 million of value. You're going to have to pay new property taxes, and it goes back to the date of death. So you get hit with a bill all of a sudden that says you owe $6,000 because the property taxes were $16,000, not $10,000.
Right.
So there's things that come with Prop 19 that help people for being able to move anywhere in the state, take their property taxes with them, but it also impacted inherited properties. So
there's a lot to be done and to review in deciding how you want to handle a property, even prior to getting to the decision-making process of if I'm going to sell it or not.
That's correct. And those are the kind of options that you have to look at is, how does Prop 19 affect my inherited property? What do I have to do in order to get it ready to sell if I choose to sell? What's the impact if I don't sell it?
Right.
And can I rent it out? And what's the impact financially for Prop 19 now? And there's just so much. It isn't as easy as it was before Proposition 19.
But the nice thing is we have the ability to help you from that process.
That's the whole idea of what we're doing today.
Right.
Is really kind of bring some things to the forefront that most people don't think about when it comes time to sell a property in that situation. They say, okay, I've inherited a property, I'm just going to sell it. Well, is that the best thing? I don't know. Is it a probate? Is it a trust? What are we doing here? There's so much. But again, start with the end in mind. How do I get to the end? You start with us, beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
I just want to make one more, since we do have the fires that are going on right now.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about a couple things to not only prepare yourself for the fires, for if a fire should happen, but also what happens if your house does burn down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, one of the things that in preparing, and we did a podcast last month in regards to insurance specifically. So it does dive in way more than what we're going to talk about today. But one of the biggest suggestions was to go around and do a video of your existing items within the house, because it's very hard after the fact to remember everything that's in your home.
Good advice.
So that's a big thing. Obviously having stuff ready to grab and go. There's a list we'll put up. I had posted the other day of a good list to have ready to go if we're in a fire situation. I know that there's been some things that have come out recently in California where the insurance companies are not able to, like a moratorium, right? So can you speak to that a bit?
Well, whenever we have a disaster like we're having now, the insurance companies, they buckle up. They want, okay, how am I going to, one, protect the assets that they've covered, and two, prevent further loss?
Yeah.
So I just think it's important that you be knowledgeable about what's going on with your insurance company. And I'm sure they're getting inundated with phone calls right now. But the sad news is that in a lot of those fires, insurance companies pulled out, and some of those folks are not insured.
Right.
So it's just a terrible situation. The moratorium stuff, you have to find out what your insurance company's up to if you're in that situation.
And if you need help with a referral for insurance, we have that. If you need an updated value on your home to make sure that you're getting enough coverage, that's something that's really important as well on your insurance coverage right now, making sure everything is buttoned up with that. I think the biggest key of this podcast was just to state, regardless of the situation that's happening, our approach is always going to be rooted in care, number one, confidence of knowing the situations within the market, and just finding you the best solution that is for your family.
We feel very strongly about taking the stress out of the situation.
Right.
And that's one of the things that we focus on. No matter what type of sale it is, there's always stress. And our job is to take the stress out of the situation. That's why we do it all.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think we've covered, most topics. Obviously, there's other things I'm sure that would pop up that are very unique situations, but we are here. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. We definitely appreciate if you would share it. I know this is a really good one that sometimes will just speak to the right person. So thank you so much. And if there's anything that you'd like us to speak in regards to, we're happy to share any additional information that you might look forward to.
The key is start with us.
Thank you.